Never be affected. Someone said something about you today. Maybe behind your back. Maybe to your face. Maybe it was a look, a tone, a silence that felt louder than words. And somewhere inside you, something moved. Something tightened. Something burned. Something shifted in a way you didn't choose and couldn't immediately stop. That moment, that involuntary movement inside you, is the battlefield. Not the person who triggered it. Not the situation that caused it. Not the words that were spoken or the injustice that occurred. The battlefield is inside you. And most people spend their entire lives being controlled by that battlefield without ever realizing it is something they can command. Every insult that lands, every failure that haunts, every rejection that replays, every opinion that gets inside and rearranges something, all of it is happening because you have not yet learned the most important skill a human being can possess. The skill of never being affected. Today, that changes. Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man in the world. He commanded armies. He governed millions. He held the fate of an empire in his hands every single day for nearly 2 decades. And yet what he wrote about, privately, obsessively, in the journal that became Meditations, was not strategy, not politics, not war. It was this: how do I remain unaffected? How do I face insult without becoming bitter? How do I face loss without becoming broken? How do I face betrayal without becoming hardened? How do I remain, amid everything the world throws at me, completely, utterly, unshakably myself? He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He did not write that because it came naturally to him. He wrote it because he had to remind himself, again and again. Because the pull of the world, the pull to react, to be wounded, to be moved by things outside his control, was constant. And he fought it every day, with every tool the Stoic philosophy gave him. That is what this video is. It is the tools, the practices, the philosophy that will teach you, slowly and permanently, to never be affected by what was never meant to control you. The nature of being affected. Before we talk about how to stop being affected, we need to understand what being affected actually means. Because most people confuse it with feeling. Being affected is not feeling. Feeling is natural. Feeling is human. The Stoics felt deeply. Grief, joy, love, anger, fear. They were not emotionless. They were not cold. What they refused, what they trained against with tremendous discipline, was being controlled by feeling. There is a difference between experiencing an emotion and being commanded by it. When someone insults you and you feel a flash of anger, that is feeling. That is natural. That is human. When that flash of anger then dictates your words, your actions, your mood for the rest of the day, your opinion of yourself, your relationship with the person, that is being affected. When someone rejects you and you feel the sting of disappointment, that is feeling. When that sting becomes a story you tell yourself for months about your worth, your future, your possibility, that is being affected. Epictetus made this distinction with extraordinary precision.
He said, "People are not disturbed by events, but by the views they take of them. It is never the event itself. It is always the meaning you attach to the event, the story you build around it, the weight you decide to give it. And here is the revelation at the center of Stoic philosophy. You decide that weight. Not consciously at first, not easily at first, but with practice, with the right understanding and the right tools, you decide. That is the beginning of never being affected. Why the world wants you affected. Here is something the Stoics understood that most people in the modern world have completely missed. The world benefits from you being affected. Think about that carefully. Every system built around your attention, every piece of media, every social platform, every political narrative, every advertisement is engineered specifically to affect you, to make you feel outrage, fear, insecurity, longing, comparison, urgency. Because an affected person is a reactive person, and a reactive person is a controllable person. When you are outraged, you click, you share, you comment, you consume more outrage. When you are insecure, you buy, you compare, you seek validation. When you are afraid, you comply, you shrink, you give up power. The affected person is the most predictable person in the room, and the world has spent billions of dollars figuring out exactly how to keep you affected. Seneca saw this dynamic, not in social media, but in the crowds, the politics, and the spectacles of Rome, and he wrote, "Retire as much as you can into yourself, and receive in your company those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those who you yourself can improve. The process is mutual, for men learn while they teach." His prescription for a world designed to pull you apart? Pull inward, deliberately, fiercely, consistently. Not in isolation, not in ignorance of the world, but with the radical awareness that your attention and your emotional state are the most valuable things you possess, and the world is constantly trying to take them from you for free. Protecting those things, choosing what affects you, is not passivity. It is the most powerful act of rebellion available to a human being. The first practice, the pause. Every person who has ever mastered their emotional state will tell you the same thing. It begins with a pause. Not a long pause, not a dramatic pause, a single breath, a half second, a moment between what happens and what you do about it. The Stoics called this space the ruling faculty, the part of your mind that observes, evaluates, and chooses. They believed this faculty was the most divine thing about a human being, the thing that separated us from animals driven purely by instinct, and they trained it relentlessly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." That instruction, simple as it sounds, is one of the most powerful practices in the entire Stoic tradition. Because most of the time when you are affected, you are not responding to what is actually happening right now. You are responding to your memory of every similar thing that has ever happened before. You are responding to your fear of what this might mean for the future. You are responding to a story that began long before this moment. The pause brings you back to the present, to what is actually here, to what is actually true right now, not what was true then, not what might be true later. Practice it this week.
The next time something tries to affect you, before you respond, before you react, before you speak or act or spiral, pause. One breath. And in that breath ask, what is actually happening right now? Not what does this remind me of? Not what does this mean about my future? What is happening right now? That single question, asked from inside a single breath, will begin to dissolve the automatic power that outside events have over your inner state. It will not happen instantly. It will not be perfect, but it will begin. And the beginning is everything. The second practice, the view from above. The Stoics had a practice they called the view from above. Imagine lifting yourself, your consciousness, your perspective, out of the immediate moment, rising above it, until you can see not just this situation, but your entire life, your entire city, your entire civilization, the entire arc of human history. From that height, how significant is the insult that was just thrown at you? From that height, how consuming is the rejection you just experienced? From that height, how permanent does this failure feel? Marcus Aurelius used this practice constantly. He would pull his perspective back until what felt enormous became small,
until what felt urgent became fleeting, until what felt like the end revealed itself as just another moment in a vastly longer story. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present. How many a Chrysippus, how many a Socrates, how many an Epictetus, how many others like them have time already swallowed up? Every person who ever felt what you are feeling right now, every person who was wounded by this exact kind of wound, consumed by this exact kind of fear, shaken by this exact kind of blow, time has already swallowed them. This moment will pass, not as a dismissal of its significance, but as a reminder that your emotional state, right now, as real as it feels, is not the final word on who you are or what your life means. Use this practice when the weight feels unbearable. Rise above it, not to escape it, but to see it for what it actually is, a moment, in a much larger story that you are still writing. The third practice, separating event from meaning. This is the practice that will fundamentally change how you process everything that happens to you. The Stoics made a radical distinction between two things that most people treat as one: the event and the meaning of the event. When someone criticizes your work, that is the event. A set of words, sounds, letters. That is all. Everything after that, the shame, the defensiveness, the self-doubt, the anger, the validation-seeking, that is the meaning, the story you attach to the event. And here is the truth that changes everything. The event is fixed. The meaning is chosen. Not easily, not automatically, but chosen. Epictetus taught his students to practice what he called fantasia cataleptic, the disciplined examination of every impression that arises in the mind. Before accepting any impression as true, before allowing any event to mean something, examine it. Ask, is this actually true? Or is this just the story I am constructing from a set of facts that could mean many different things? Someone didn't reply to your message. That is the event. They hate you. That is one meaning, a meaning you chose. They are busy. That is another. They didn't see it. Another. They are struggling with something entirely unrelated to you. Another. One event, infinite possible meanings.
And the meaning you choose, almost always automatically, almost always unconsciously, becomes your emotional reality. Begin to catch yourself in the moment of meaning-making, not to deny the event, to examine the meaning. Because 9 times out of 10, the meaning that is hurting you is not the only interpretation available. It is simply the most familiar one. The fourth practice, building an unaffected identity. Here is where we go beneath the surface, because all the practices in the world will only carry you so far if your identity is still built on external validation. If your sense of who you are depends on how people treat you, then every slight becomes a threat to your existence. If your sense of worth depends on your results, then every failure becomes an identity crisis. If your sense of safety depends on being liked, then every disapproval becomes an emergency. The Stoics understood that the deepest root of being affected is this: tying your identity to things outside yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." Self-respect, not other respect, not approval respect. The kind of respect that comes from inside, from knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you will and will not do, regardless of what the world offers or threatens. When your identity is rooted in your values, in your character, your commitments, your integrity, then what happens outside you cannot touch what you are inside. Someone insults your intelligence. If your identity is rooted in external validation, that lands. It wounds. It affects. But if your identity is rooted in your commitment to lifelong learning, in the Stoic value of always seeking wisdom, then their opinion is simply irrelevant data. It cannot find purchase because there is no wound there to open. This is not built overnight. It is built to consistent, deliberate choices about what you anchor your sense of self to. Anchor it to your values, your disciplines, your effort, your character, and watch how little the world's opinion can move you.
The fifth practice, amor fati, love what happens. This is the most advanced and most liberating of all the Stoic teachings. The Romans called it amor fati, love of fate. Not acceptance of fate. Not tolerance of fate. Not resigned endurance of fate. Love. The active, chosen, deliberate embrace of everything that happens, including the painful things, the unwanted things, the things that break you open and leave you wondering how you will put yourself back together. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." A blazing fire. The Stoic ideal was not a person who never encountered difficulty. It was a person who had become so practiced at using difficulty that they were genuinely grateful for it. Not because pain is pleasant, because they understood at the deepest level that every difficult thing that has ever happened to them had made them more of who they needed to become. Every betrayal had sharpened their discernment. Every failure had refined their approach. Every rejection had redirected them towards something more aligned. Every wound had revealed something they needed to examine and heal. When you reach amor fati, when you genuinely arrive at the place where you can look at hardship and say, with sincerity, "This is exactly what I needed," you have become truly unaffected. Not because nothing happens to you, but because everything that happens to you is now working for you. This is the pinnacle. And the path to it is every practice we have walked through together today. The pause, the view from above, the separation of event from meaning, the unaffected identity. All of it leads here, to a life where nothing the world throws at you is wasted, where every blow becomes a building block, where every storm strengthens the fortress rather than breaking it. That is amor fati. That is what it means to never be affected. The long walk. I want to be honest with you about something. This is not a destination you reach and then stay. There will be days, even after years of this practice, when something gets through. When someone's words find an old wound you thought was healed, when a failure hits harder than you expected, when the world moves something inside you that you thought was immovable. Do not be ashamed of those days. Marcus Aurelius, who spent 20 years practicing Stoic philosophy with more discipline than almost any human being in history, still had to remind himself of these principles daily, still fell short, still wrote the same lessons to himself again and again. The practice is not a ladder you climb and leave behind. It is a discipline you return to. Every morning, every difficult conversation, every moment of temptation to react, to be wounded, to give away your peace to something that doesn't deserve it. You return. You practice, you fall short, you return again. And over time, slowly, imperceptibly, and then suddenly all at once, you notice that things that once consumed you now barely register, that provocations that once kept you awake now dissolve by morning, that your baseline state, the place you return to when the noise settles, is calmer than it has ever been. That is not enlightenment. That is practice. And you are capable of it. The world will always try to affect you.
It will always send people who push your buttons, situations that test your patience, failures that challenge your belief in yourself, and noise that tries to drown out your own clarity. It will never stop, but you can change how you meet it. You can build the pause, you can develop the view from above, you can separate event from meaning, you can root your identity in what is unshakable. You can move step by step toward the love of everything that comes, and the person who walks that path consistently, imperfectly, courageously becomes something rare, someone the world cannot move, someone who has found inside the chaos of living a stillness that no one can take. That is the person you are becoming. Never be affected. Not because nothing matters, but because you have decided what matters, and you will not give that decision to anyone else. If this reached something real in you, I want to make you one request. Subscribe to Stoic Ascension. This channel is built for people who are serious, not about hype, not about shortcuts, about the real, ancient, tested work of becoming someone who cannot be shaken. Every week we go deeper,
into the philosophy, into the practice, into the kind of thinking that changes not just how you feel, but who you are. Subscribe, ring the bell, come back, because this work, the work of never being affected, is the work of a lifetime, and you do not have to walk it alone. Until next time, guard your mind, guard your peace, guard your ascension.